What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. It's time for our Big Ten tier power rankings. I did this for the SEC. If you missed that video, go back and check it out. So we're trying to kind of put the teams into tiers because I talked about this in the SEC video. It's when you put out rankings, a team could be ranked at number 10, a team could be ranked at number 25, and you could think that those teams are really, really close. They are very close. But because one has a 10 and one has a 25 in front of them, everyone's going to think, wow, you think this team's way better than this team. But there's so much of this one specific group of college football, and it's the teams after the top 9 or 10 teams. There's like this huge group of teams, especially in the SEC and in the Big Ten, and we're going to kind of put them all into tiers here, and I'll tell you sort of how it matches up with the SEC. But I will probably do like a tier video for all of the Power 5 and put all the teams into tiers so you can kind of compare. But let's just get right to it here with our first tier in the Big Ten. Tier number 1, we've only got one team there, and that is Ohio State. And I still believe that Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State are in a tier above everyone else heading into this season. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll be different than I expect. And I know one of the things that a lot of people are probably going to say, why is Michigan not in the same tier as Ohio State? Michigan beat Ohio State last year. Michigan just went to the college football playoff. Well, it's all about what they have coming back. And Michigan just loses so many big-time players on defense. It's hard to imagine their defense being as really anywhere close to as good as it was last year. Ohio State has a lot of guys coming back on both sides of the ball. They've recruited at a higher level than Michigan. And most people, I think, would agree that Ohio State is clearly the favorite in the Big Ten. Doesn't mean they're guaranteed to win this conference because there are a lot of good teams in the Big Ten. So something crazy could happen. But the favorite going into the year has to be Ohio State, and they are in that first tier. Moving on to tier number 2, I've got Michigan and Michigan State. I'm really high on Michigan State. A lot of people maybe think I'm overrating this team. And maybe it's partly because I underrated them so much last year, and I'm trying to make up for that. But again, when I look down the roster here, I like what they have coming back on both sides of the ball. Yeah, they lose a few good players on defense, but for the most part, and I know a lot of people are going to talk about Kenneth Walker being gone. Look at what they brought in through the transfer portal. Jarek Broussard. Remember that name. I think he's going to be really, really good for them at running back. Peyton Thorne back at quarterback. Michigan, yeah, they lose all those guys on defense. But when you look at what they bring back on offense, and even adding Ronnie Bell, who was injured last year, bringing in an All-American type center on the offensive line, this offense should be really good. Maybe the best offense that Jim Harbaugh has had at Michigan, especially if J.J. McCarthy kind of lives up to his potential and winds up taking over that quarterback job. They're loaded, they're deep, and running back, wide receiver, maybe you don't have a bunch of All-American type players, but there's a lot of talent, I think, in this wide receiver group, tight end group as well. So I think Michigan's going to be really good on that side of the ball. It all depends on how well they can reload on defense. If they're able to do that, Michigan has a chance to get back to the college football playoff. But just too many question marks for me on that side of the ball to put them in that top tier. Moving on to tier 3. So this is the big tier. We're talking about these teams in the Big Ten. And this is the same tier that we talked about in the SEC that I think had 7 teams. Now, there really weren't any tier 2 teams in the SEC if we're looking at it nationally. Michigan and Michigan State, I think, are above that second tier in the SEC. Again, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, just go back and watch the SEC video. But all of these teams, I think, are pretty even. And we're talking about 5 teams out of the Big Ten West: Nebraska, Iowa, Purdue, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And then also Penn State out of the Big Ten East. They're the only team out of that division in this tier. Penn State has a talented roster, but they've got some holes to fill, and I don't know about the Nittany Lions. It's hard for me to put them into that second tier up there with Michigan and Michigan State. Big Ten West, it is wide open. Nebraska, I really like the last couple of transfers that they added. They did a good job adding some players on that defensive line. That was a big area of weakness for them kind of coming into this year. So they used the portal really well. I think they had a top 10 portal class. Last I saw the rankings, maybe even top 5. I can't remember. But it's going to be real interesting to see what Casey Thompson can do at quarterback. They've added some receivers in the transfer portal. Nebraska has maybe the most potential out of these teams in the Big Ten West. The potential is there, but obviously they haven't lived up to that potential, so we'll see if that changes this year. Purdue has a lot coming back. I really like this Purdue team. I think that offensively they're going to be pretty good. Defensively, yeah, they lose a few key players, but they should be strong, I think, on that side of the ball. Good enough. It's going to be the offense, though, that carries Purdue. Iowa's kind of opposite defense. We know they're going to be good there. With Iowa and Wisconsin, it's going to be defense. It's going to be running the football. For them to really take that next step and have a chance to get into that next tier, it will come down to the quarterbacks. The quarterback play has to be better if they're going to get there. And Minnesota, one of the most experienced teams coming back this year. They've got a lot of experience coming back, both sides of the ball. Tanner Morgan's there for his, 10th or 11th year, it seems like. Mo Ibrahim back after that injury last year. This is a very talented team. And again, I've said this many times, the Big Ten West, it's wide open. And I think all 5 of these teams have a great chance to win that division. Tier number 4. So we only had 5 tiers in the SEC because they didn't have any teams in one of the tiers, which we'll talk about later on. But I'm using all 6 tiers here in the Big Ten. And I think Maryland and Indiana go to this tier number 4. Maryland has some key pieces coming back on both sides of the ball. Maryland's interesting. They are really interesting, and they might even have a chance to jump into that next tier when you look at the talent that they have coming back this year, the production they have coming back. Some guys got injured last year that will be back this year. Maryland could be a dangerous team. They're a team to keep an eye on. And here's Indiana in this tier. A lot of people are going to say, well, you overrated them last year. You're overrating them again this year. I think injuries really hurt them last season. I think that we kind of see them do what, not to the level we thought last year. I think we see them bounce back this year. Added some guys in the transfer portal that I think will help them out as well. And so I think Indiana has a chance to maybe jump into this tier number 4. I don't think they're going to finish at the bottom of the Big Ten this year. Moving on to tier number 5, that's Northwestern and Rutgers. Both of these teams have some potential. They have some big losses, but Northwestern's coached really well, and they don't usually have down years 2 years in a row, so they could really bounce back and surprise this year. That wouldn't shock me. Greg Schiano doing a great job at Rutgers. They've got some talent on that roster, some guys coming back there as well, some experience. So both of these teams I don't think are going to be terrible, but I don't really see them contending with the top teams in the Big Ten. And then the last team is Illinois. They're in that bottom tier, tier number 6. This will be the same tier as Vanderbilt in the SEC. Illinois wasn't great last year. They showed some flashes at times, but they lose like a ton of guys off of last year's team. It's a complete rebuild for Brett Bielema. He's got to just kind of start over here with Illinois, and I think this is going to be a pretty rough year for them. Give it some time. Maybe they can get things turned around, but as far as 2022 goes, I think Illinois is going to be the worst team in the Big Ten. So that's how I would put these teams into tiers. Would love to get your thoughts, your rankings. Give them to me down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.